Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Fanbase Weekly podcast. This is a special edition of our show as we're conducting a panel discussion on the recently released Predator: Killer of Killers. Now, before I get to my crew here, I do want to note that all episodes of the Fanbase Weekly podcast this month are sponsored by Geek Fest, the world's first and largest traveling comic convention film festival tour. We're honored to have Geek Fest as a sponsor. I look forward to sharing details about that film festival tour with you later in the show. But let me introduce myself. I'm Bryant Dillon. I am president of Fanbase Press. I am also co-host of the Fanbase Weekly podcast, as well as the writer behind projects like Something Animal and Identity Thief. And I'm going to be your moderator for this discussion. So let me introduce the rest of the crew. First up, we've got Kraig Rasmussen. He's an experienced self-publishing graphic novelist and art coach with a history of working in comics, illustration, and story. He's also been on a number of our Alien and Predator podcasts. Kraig, welcome back.
Thank you for having me on this hunt.
You are much needed. We've got Stephen Prince as well. Stephen is the creator and writer of Monster Matador. He used to work in the toy industry where he managed and developed toy lines and animation projects. Now he writes comics. Stephen, welcome back.
Thanks, Dylan, you son of a bitch.
I knew someone was going to say it. We are also joined by David Accampo. He's a writer and designer living in Portland, Oregon. He's written prose, comics, video games, and more. He's the co-creator of the audio drama Wormwood, a serialized mystery, as well as the comic series Lost Angels, the fantasy graphic novel The Margins, which is published by Fanbase Press, and the horror anthology Spectral. David, welcome. You've also joined us for a number of Predator and Alien discussions, so you're an experienced hunter.
It falls under the Accampo Codex, which is find who is speaking about aliens and predators and hugger your way onto their podcast. So
make their podcast your trophy.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent strategy, at least when it comes to me. We're also joined by another veteran of the Alien Predator podcast here at Fanbase Press, Phillip Kelly. He's a Fanbase Press contributor. He's also a member of the podcast group POPSKL and a professional performer, writer, filmmaker, and comedian. Phillip, welcome back for another one.
Glad to be here. And I just looking at all of us, no offense to anyone, we would be completely safe from the Predator, I think.
We don't pose a threat, you don't
No,
think?
we don't. We do not pose a threat.
And I'm pushing too many papers over here?
Maybe so. Maybe so.
We've all gotten
Except when my arm gets cut off, it's just still drawing, not firing.
Unless we get a critic, right? An artistic critic Predator.
Yes. There you go. There you go.
Well, I do want to give a spoiler warning. This is fresh out there, just a couple of days. Predator: Killer of All Killers. For anyone that does not know, it's a 2025 animated science fiction action horror anthology film. It's directed by Dan Trachtenberg. It's co-directed by Joshua Wasson, and it's written by Micho Robert Rutar. It's produced by the 20th Century Studios and Davis Entertainment, and it's actually the sixth film and eighth installment overall in the Predator franchise. Now, by October 2024, Trachtenberg, who had previously directed 2022's Prey, it became known that he had made a secret Predator film in the franchise. It was set to be released prior to Predator Badlands, which is coming to theaters in November 2025. And then in April, we got the film's title, the release date, and some trailers. Animation was provided by Third Floor, and the story itself centers around a Viking raider, a ninja in feudal Japan, and a World War II pilot who each encounter a fierce intergalactic hunter and defeat the creature. Dubbed a killer of killers, these humans are then abducted and taken to an alien world by the hunters in order to serve as prey in further and more disturbing hunts. Now, as I mentioned, the film itself was only released a few days ago, on June 6th on Hulu, and it has received generally positive reviews from critics so far. I have just a few lines here. Variety wrote that Killer of Killers brought, quote, a stylized aesthetic to the impressive action set pieces and copious bloodshed, end quote. And then IndieWire called it gloriously fun and described it as an awesomely violent animated deathmatch that highlights the full potential of the franchise. So you all are my experts. So I want to go to to the four of you. What are your thoughts on this latest chapter of the Predator universe, and how, in your mind, if it does, how does it stand out from what we've seen before? Philip, why don't you start us off on this one?
Yeah, sure. Well, first I have to say, usually I worry going into anthologies,
Okay.
because they can wear thin, they can become repetitive, they can become a little tiring and boring by like the third or fourth one. You're like, okay, here we go again. I found myself excited as each one started and immediately pulled in to every story because they all felt very unique to their own character and world and sort of, and the characters are so well drawn, and not just like literally drawn, but written that I just found myself completely absorbed, and it was a really wonderful experience. And I was very much taken aback by the violence at first. I was like, oh, okay, we're going there. Hello. And so they really amped up the violence. I think aesthetically and visually, this adds a lot to the world that we haven't necessarily gotten before, which I can understand why they did it with animation, because you can go there without spending, $500 million.
Right. Mhm.
And I thought that was really nice. And it was, I think Predators, the one that
Robert Rodriguez
Robert Rodriguez produced.
produced.
He
Yeah.
produced. Yeah, I can't remember the director's name right now. It's on the
Nimrod
tip of my
Antal.
tongue. Yes,
Yeah.
Nimrod.
Nimrod,
Yes,
yeah.
Nimrod. I think it was attempting to do something like what we got with this. I think it
Mhm.
fell maybe a little short of greatness. Um, so it's not like this was. I felt like this was trying to, or even was like recreating the wheel per se. But I think it did it in a way. It took that idea and that premise and did it in a way that really was wonderful. I'll say that it was just really wonderful, a delight to watch. As you know, hunting humans and killing them for sport, as delightful as that can be. But it was dramatically potent, and I don't think we've always gotten that with Predator movies. They tried with the autistic kid.
No.
No, they tried.
Maybe they
Eh,
tried, but it did.
eh.
It did not. Did that
No, it
not?
didn't. No, it did not work. So it was
Yeah,
nice to get
anyone who wants to hear Philip and I's thoughts on the Predator, check out that
Oh,
Fanbase
we
feature.
dive
Oh
in.
yeah. Mhm.
So it was. I haven't really seen a Predator film where I was quite so attached on an emotional level to the characters. So I think you always find him awesome, of course. Like Schwarzenegger is awesome. I mean, he kicks ass. But I wasn't like, oh my God, my heart is breaking for Schwarzenegger right
Oh,
now.
interesting.
You know what I mean? And I felt those emotions while watching this. I guess Prey is about the closest I
Great.
get to really caring about the characters on a deeper level outside of action heroism.
Sure.
And of course, that was Trachtenberg again, who seems to be that seems to be what he wants to do, and I totally appreciate that.
Well,
Anyway, there's my piece.
I will save my thoughts, but I'll just add off of that. I do think that I had the same reaction with Trachtenberg. I was a little like, all right, let's see if what we can do. And once the film started, I was like, oh, I remember how safe I felt in his hands. Like
Yeah,
I feel like he gets this mythology, this material, and
yeah,
maybe everyone will not have different thoughts on this, but at least for me, he seems to jive with the way that I think these films should feel, and adds to them, which seems to be what you're saying, Phil.
yeah.
Kraig, what are your thoughts? How do you feel about this anthology? What makes it different from what's come before?
well, I mean, to me, it's what I like about Trachtenberg's vision here in the case of Prey and this, and clearly Badlands, and probably the sequel for this that's probably either been shot or is in the process of heading in that direction.
Seems like, right?
Also,
Yeah.
already with Arnie attached as Dutch, most likely. I don't know. I feel like this train has been moving unbeknownst to us in a lot of ways, and in a deeper way, and that became abundantly clear just in the first interstitial, where you realize, oh, I see what we're doing. We're tying all this together with something else. And I think, Phil was saying he felt compelled to go to the next sequence by the time one ended, he was
Yeah.
like excited to see where things went because he was so attached to the character they just showed. And you're already like, okay, what are they going to give us in Japan now with these guys? You know, and these thoroughly developed characters with this very intense relationship. But I think, you know, Trachtenberg, what I like is that he recontextualizes what's good about the first film or re-understands what's good about it, the same way that they've tried to do with some alien stuff recently, and recognize that it isn't about big sweaty guys or somebody who's a particular specialist, although you can definitely say he recognizes having a particular specialist is good, but it's not about romanticizing their B movie actionness, I guess. You know, like Amber Midthunder, she comes off as a real person. She's got her own struggles that she's dealing with. She just wants to be accepted. She wants to be able to prove herself like anybody else in her tribe. And she's a very compelling character. So not only do you understand how intelligent she is and resourceful before she ever interacts with the Yautja, but you know, you're just along for the ride and you buy the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, and she doesn't need to be able to bench 400 pounds. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with the story. And I like that he's re-understood the entire thing from that perspective across the board, it seems. I mean, even with Elle Fanning being a replicant, I mean, not a replicant, sorry, a synthetic.
An artificial person.
Yeah, I know you prefer that yourself. But anyway, is that milk on your screen? Anyway, no, I just really I love that he's opened it up to say, you know, we could either do the John Wick thing where it's this endless cavalcade of action sequences with, you know, specialists being emphasized in that direction, like you know, for instance, the pilot. I love that his ship was his weapon.
Yeah.
You know, like there was a lot of re-understanding that I was really impressed and proud of because this is an era of science fiction that is thin and hollow and cheap and you know, I have a lot of things I could say, but basically when you see somebody come at it this seriously, it's refreshing. So that's my general
Definitely
thoughts about
agree
it.
with that. It is very interesting, and I we'll get into it more. I definitely agree that it feels like there are wheels in motion, that this franchise is being built in a very solid and cinematic way, especially as we'll get into more plot details revealed. But it gets even more interesting when you start thinking, is the Alien franchise being built on a trajectory to intersect as well? You know, so.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, what was your reaction to the film? What do you think
Um,
makes it stand out?
Pretty much the same as everyone. I mean, Predator, you know, the first Predator film is like, you know, the holy grail, right? I love it. And they never really went back to that well as much, you
Hmm.
know, as you would think, which is interesting. But like everyone said, this movie, just in terms of the character stuff, like after every little character piece, I wanted more. Like the Viking one,
Yeah.
I wanted a movie of that. Like
Mhm.
there was just it was really well done. The action was everything you want to see in a Predator movie. I mean, they just took it, you know, as far as, you know, you could probably go, and it was great. It was everything on paper. So I really enjoyed it. I'm not completely sold on what happens at the end, and we could talk about
Yeah,
that
definitely.
later.
You mean
Um,
the alien planet stuff or
yeah,
okay.
yeah, that kind of stuff, and we could talk about it more in depth later. But I mean, but just in terms of the trajectory of the franchise and whatever, I
Hmm.
definitely love where they're taking it. And I mean, it's an animated film, so there are definitely some conceits you have to take.
Sure.
But it was a very I felt like could have maybe used another half hour,
Sure. Sure.
you
Always want
know,
a little
like most
more.
things.
Yeah.
But it was look for something like for uh, a series that I think has been very challenging for
Oh yeah.
filmmakers since the first one. I mean, and I love Predator too. I think Predators is good for what
Yeah.
it is.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
but it's definitely it's been a challenging franchise, and I think this kind of positions it for success. You know, kind of carrying all the great things from what came before, but also kind of opening up in a new way that
Yeah.
is interesting.
I guess I have the same confidence that I'm hearing from you, where I'm like, this makes me feel like Dan Trachtenberg has a vision.
Hmm.
He's coming back
Yeah,
again. He's not a
yeah,
one-hit wonder, with this franchise. It seems like there's going to be some building of mythology that is actually
yeah,
interesting and giving us these characters. I mean, we'll get into it, I think, more, but just even talking about the Viking mother, the way they utilize storytelling and character development so succinctly, so that
hmm
there are three times she says in the film, I think, if I die, you avenge me,
right,
and then the third time she says instead, don't avenge me, which is such
right,
a huge moment. And
hmm
I was so impressed by, like, wow, these characters, we spend what, 20 minutes with each of them
yeah,
essentially, and we get really attached and know who they
hmm
are and why they're doing the things that they're doing. It's not just Phil and I were just talking about Jaws earlier today, and one of the key takeaways was just how much that film works because we care about what's going on with these characters. They're not just set
hmm
up to be
Hmm.
killed, you
right,
know?
right. And you have to care. You have to care about her son. You have to
Hmm.
care
Mhm.
about, I forget his name now, his
Yeah.
brother in the second
Hmm.
one. You
Right.
have,
Yeah.
and they did such a good job. I mean, like whatever those, each section was like 20, 25 minutes, that by the time you hit that moment, that payoff, it works. Like you're
Yeah.
there, you're into it.
Dave, what are your thoughts? What made you think this stood out from the other Predator films? What did you think of
Yeah.
it?
I think that dovetails really nicely with my thoughts. Going into this, obviously, just watching the trailer, I knew that it was going to be different time periods. I knew they were doing the whole like Viking, samurai, World War II soldier, and and so I kind of went into it with a bit of an expectation of, okay, we're going to have this anthology style. Technically, not an anthology, but I guess we could argue that. But as I'm watching it, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking, okay, you've got to hook me with this story. You're either going to not give me enough story. It's going to be too thin, as Kraig was saying, or you're going to give me this really good hook, but you've got to do it just right. And as the Viking story, I actually got a little nervous during the first story because I'm like, are they going to be able to pay this off?
Right.
And
Hmm.
that's where I think you guys are giving a lot of praise to Trachtenberg or everybody involved in the storytelling because this was a movie that came down to the inch, like the final moments of the film, and I was like, wow, they hit everything. They nailed every nail into the coffin, sealed it up. It's good to go, and I really liked that. So I think structurally it was really strong. I will say it's funny. All of you are kind of mentioning like, oh, the franchise is in good hands, and this is where it's going to go. That was almost like in a way my least favorite
Oh
part,
yeah.
and that's just a me thing because at this point I'm realizing how fatigued I am on which direction Star Wars is going, which direction the Marvel movies are
Sure,
going.
sure.
Everything is about like everyone loved the end of Thunderbolts. I'm trying not to spoil even titles, but
It's spoiled. You can.
yeah, but like the Fantastic Four thing at the end. That's
Yeah.
my least favorite thing. And I know everybody's like, oh my God, it's the ship. But we know that's coming. We've seen trailer, but I didn't want that building block because I think it racks focus away from the story you're telling and the emotion and the humanity. And the Thunderbolts movie had a lot of that. And it makes it go, oh, but it's just part of this larger puzzle. So that is what, like when you guys are talking about Dutch coming, I saw some articles about that, about like, oh, they could do this now and they could do that now. And I know we'll probably talk about it later, but that was kind of the least interesting
Sure.
bit for me. What it was is, will they bring all these stories together? Will I care about these people? And I think you've all, noted that, that this is deeper than the thin action hero veneer that and frankly, it's what we needed in the 80s. But or it's what we got in the 80s anyway. But we go a little. I think we can make our films a little richer now. Our characters a little more nuanced, and I felt like each of those had it. The fact that when they're all together, the samurai, or ninja, the Viking soldier, and the soldier, the fact that they each have a piece of the puzzle that they need to solve the equation, the fact that they're each missing something, that they're each dealing with something that they have to overcome. You mentioned the woman's saying, don't avenge me.
Yeah, right.
That is her change, right? I forget the pilot's name, but Torres.
Taurus,
Torres,
Taurus.
yeah. So Torres, he had to sort of do that plane whisperer thing where he listens to the ship and figures it out. He has to become a pilot and lose the doubt. And the samurai brothers were set up to hurt each other, but how did they beat the predator? They worked together. He's the one that realizes that they have to work together, and they actually go to bat for each other, and without communicating in any particular language, they're able to do this, which was, I just thought, a wonderful feat that I didn't think they were going to pull off until the end. I'm like, they're not going to pull this off. I definitely had that. The only other reaction I'll say is that a couple of you mentioned this is an animated film. So as I went into it, I don't know if any of you experienced this, or again, it's just a me thing, but there's a little remove when we look at animation, even really good animation. There's a little, like, if someone's hanging off a plane in any animation, I don't feel the same thing if someone's hanging off a plane in a Mission Impossible or whatever, even though I know it's movie magic,
Not when Tom Cruise is involved.
Well, unless it's Tom Cruise, right? but in general, I know that there's safety measures and things going on, but there's something that tricks my brain that, like, oh, this is why I love martial arts films. Because there's somebody doing it. There's a level of improvisation. There is a level of mistakes that can happen. There's a level of intuition and spontaneity that can happen, even in the most choreographed things. And that's what I grew up on, and I love that. And so when I was watching the Viking one, I felt like this is so storyboarded. It's beautiful. Every frame had texture. But I kind of wanted it to be a little more like an anime, like a Miyazaki, where you get like a little motion, a little fluidity to it, because it was very rigid.
Sure.
And I do feel like when they got to the Ninja Samurai one, there was more fluidity. There was a little blur in the swords and things like that. So it seemed like, I don't know if they were figuring things out as they went along, or it's just my preconceived notions of it. But I did feel I did feel a little barrier to entry where part of me was like, man, I wish this was live action, because that was the original joy of Predator, was Arnie out there in the jungle with this giant creature that was real, and it Wolverine claws. And this is what's baked into my 13-year-old brain, or whatever, however old I was when it came out. So yeah, I really liked it. It won me over, but there were little bits and pieces where I was really like, my intellectual brain was like dissecting it and thinking about what this means to me, and does this work, does that not work? And those were just a few little nits that I had here and there.
It felt like a PS3 cutscene.
Yeah,
it does have a little bit of that, and I've seen people
shots fired.
That is a little maybe a little rough. But
don't tag Dan Trachtenberg in this episode, I guess. Sorry.
I have seen varied thoughts on this, and people have similar reactions to the What If series. I was impressed enough with this animation that it worked for me. I can be really picky about that stuff, but this, for whatever, I can't say exactly what, but the performances felt human enough, there enough that it did work for me. But I will also, one of the things that really impressed me about this film, and I think speaks to what you're saying, David, is that I think they've got a really good idea, or at least maybe Trachtenberg, I don't know who it is. Someone's got a good idea of how to use the streaming service and animated things like this to boost the live action films, because Prey was Prey clearly surprised everyone. They wished they had put it in theaters and got more money for that film. That's why Badlands is going to theaters. But the fact that Trachtenberg wants to like set up little things or enhance the universe with something like this. This is exactly the kind of thing that an old fan like myself, who's seen all these Dark Horse comics, I think, is like, this is perfect. Maybe you don't have to watch this to follow all the films, but it's also the kind of thing, as they run away from streaming services, I'm like, this is the kind of exclusive thing that would make a streaming service attractive. If you were dropping things like this every now and then in the Marvel universe or in Star Wars or Predator, like, people would be interested in that stuff. But
You realize what you just said, though, is you said Disney Plus, because they've done all of those.
They have
Across the board. They're the only ones that are taking that level of interest in streaming. And in fact, I mean, it's weird because you say that because Tony Gilroy just came out and said streaming is dead and Disney
Well,
knows it.
I think they're very much. I think that honestly bet you that this is a throwaway marketing thing for them. This is probably not a huge expense, and they think this is something we can put on Hulu, and
it's a cheap way to expand the universe so they can put more films out there. I mean, obviously, let's not bury the lead that, Elle Fanning's character has the Wayland Yutani. She's, we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So because she's a synthetic and all that stuff is obviously connected, who knows what we're going to actually see in that movie? There's the Predator King in this that has alien tails on his back, I think, maybe even a queen tail. I can't tell exactly. It's like a little off because some of my complaints about the animation are things like that, where I don't have a huge love for CG looking animation that feels like a PlayStation cutscene or whatever. I'm very withdrawn from animation these days because so much of it is that. Even though I'm sure there's great things, I hear Flow is very good and the Wild Robot is very good, but like I haven't had a moment where I'm ready to give them a chance because of all the other garbage that's out there. And it's very similar to all the blockbuster action garbage that's out there. It's like hard for me to go back to Marvel right now because I'm a little beat down by, and not even Marvel is doing it. It's like things like Fountain of Youth, which just came out. It's a piece of crap. And you're just like, oh my God, man, why can't we just recognize that the computer isn't always the tool for the job? Or if it is, we have to figure out how to humanize it, to David's point, like to soften it and give me the Miyazaki, give me a lush environment, give me the movement. I thought it was great in this movie. This is really devil's advocate a little bit, but there were small details, where I was like, okay, well, I would love to read in more to the skull or the giant skeleton on the Predator ship at the end, like, was that something we've seen before? But was it stylized for this movie? So we couldn't say probably not, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of ways where I would have connected deeper to it if it was live action as well, or anime style, although, maybe they wanted to separate themselves from Animatrix.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, and this one, I mean, each frame of this was beautiful. The texture, the patina that was on, I mean, it looked real. The art style I did really like. But yeah, there was a part, I think it was early on, and this again, maybe like hypervigilance on my part, like I'm looking for it, but there's maybe when the first time she goes underwater, or there's a fight scene and it feels like a bunch of storyboards like flipped through, where it's just like, and you realize there's no fluidity.
Keyframe kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. The beginning was choppier than the rest of the film. The first, it definitely was.
So it's not just me then. I'm
no. Yeah. The beginning. That's why I say the PS3, because the beginning was very choppy and very kind of, and then it was more fluid. But there was definitely some issues or whatever you want to call it during the Viking.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I wonder if that was a stylistic choice for that one, but because each of these stories within had its own feel, and I really appreciated that as well. But there's something, and I'm not saying, oh my God, that this movie sucks, they should have made it like live action and it would be good. I'm saying like there were a couple little barriers that just like kind of kept me at a little remove, and some of it was animation, and some of it is the larger picture. And I do want to address, Bryant, I totally am, like, as a creator, the idea of like filling in a secret movie and like having an expansion of the universe and all, I would write the hell out of that, right? But I think it is the fatigue of, as everyone else is saying, there's a lot out there, and everything is building blocks on something else. And I think it steals from us being able to really, live in the emotion of the film. And this film does have emotion. It is deeper than, it's not the deepest thing in the world, but it's deeper than the first Predator, which is a low bar, I get. But, I like that they have these three characters that are each trying to overcome something, and they make sure that the story has that focus in it. And I love that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me take us to our next topic. Basically standout moments, like what is a moment that really stood out from this film to you that
this is pretty deep. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Yes, Steve,
Sorry,
you've
Brian.
already
Sorry
sold
to
me.
interrupt.
You've sold me.
This is going on YouTube, right?
That is definitely a standout
Visual
moment.
gag for
Standout moment is when Bill Duke shaves his face until he breaks the razor. Yes. Um, but yeah,
Anytime.
what hit you particularly you know I don't know, strongly or impactfully when watching this film? Kraig, why don't you start us off on this one?
Oh, for some reason, I did not expect you to choose me first. Um, I mean, for one thing, it's always great to see ninja action. It's very rare these days, surprisingly, unless it's the rare Scott Adkins movie. But I thought that when he arms up with all oh shit. I almost knocked my water over because I've talked with my hands too much. When he arms up with all the shinobi kit, he opens up the
Hmm.
secret drawer in the floor and it's just like, all right, it's time to go because my dad's dead. So now I finally get to show my brother what I've learned secretly because whatever. I love the rivalry between them, most of all because the whole time they're fighting before the predator gets involved, you're actually not entirely sure what the goal is all the way to the point that the railing breaks. And that moment, like when he puts his sword away after cutting his face and kind of paying him back, and then the railing breaks and he's breathless and he's
Yeah.
gutted, and you're like, fuck yeah, I love that he's had this moment of true honor beyond samurai honor and like brotherly honor has taken hold. And I thought that was like that really hit me as a chilling moment. I thought that was great. I mean, the relationships are great across the board, but that was probably the real moment for me that stood out
Yeah.
among everything. And then I'm a huge Asian martial arts nerd,
Sure.
so
No, that was a fantastic moment.
yeah.
Steve, what was one moment that stood out to you?
I like the brother stuff, but I'll go with something else. When Ursa confronts the guy who killed her dad,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh
and
my gosh.
and he's just like, whatever, I don't know. And her reaction to that, like I thought that was animated really well
Mhm.
because you just feel that whole thing. They build her up this whole badass, I'm gonna go, and then she hits that moment, and it's not at all what she expects, and then she's kind of frozen. She doesn't know.
Mhm.
I thought that was a really nice. I thought that was a really well done scene.
I mean, that's
Um,
subverted in general because her kid is the one
yeah,
that kills him. But
Yeah.
once he gets
exactly. Yeah,
to the
yeah,
fever
exactly.
pitch of talking shit, he's
Right.
he's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like, "Nah, man, you're
yeah,
done.
yeah,
I know the
yeah. So
truth
that
here."
that whole sequence, I really liked how that played out. Like there,
Yeah,
there were a
it's
lot of
cool.
moments like that. But the stuff with the brothers, I felt too was, that moment at the end where they're, the two trees fall in, whatever, and the predators in the back, and they're just kind of having that moment before,
Yeah,
the end of it. It was just really. I mean, there were a lot of really nicely done moments like that. So.
that's a great. The great point. Dave, what stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, all those scenes, the brothers, I did love that. Again, I'm with you with Kraig on the whole martial arts stuff. I love seeing ninjas. I mean, that's kind of like what we grew up with in the 70s and 80s. So I did love that. And I could tell, yeah, like if I had seen this like right after Predator, that would have been like my section was like the samurai and the ninja and the
Yeah.
brothers. Oh my God, it's so badass. Um, I love the rooftop fight scene where the tiles are breaking off the roof. And so that's
Oh
Oh,
kind of giving
Yeah.
you a
Wonderful.
sense of where the
yeah.
predator is. I thought that
Yeah.
was a great way to kind of play with the whole invisibility and cloaking and all that stuff while staying true to the ninja tropes. But I also want to say that the one I didn't expect to love as much as I did is the World War II one. As a kid, I loved fantasy and I love martial arts stuff, right? So the Viking and the samurai are like a given for me. Um, uh, but the Torres, that character, I just maybe love the earnestness of it. I love that it's a father-son story. I love that, and I love that, Michael Biehn. I can't remember what his character name is. What is his name? Vandy?
Andy?
Yeah,
Taffy?
Yeah,
No, I don't know.
Andy,
Yeah.
and he's sort of gruff, but he kind of like dotes on the kid, like
Yeah.
and it's about becoming who you truly are. It's about becoming that pilot, like really that's your dream and encapsulate. And then it also had a freaking sky pirate predator, which was badass. He had like an eye patch, you guys, and it was like, and I just thought that was so cool. And some of the stunts there, the animation
Yeah.
there while it didn't have that, like, I feel like this is real hanging from an airplane feel, they did it. Like when he dives down and kind of goes sideways between the buildings, that captured a bit of that for me. And then just some of the stunts in the plane, it felt more fluid there. It just it that action really worked for me.
Yeah.
Maybe because I didn't expect it. Maybe I wasn't on the lookout for it. Maybe I was even thought I'd be let down by that section. But I think that whole segment is fantastic.
I would agree. That was a quite surprising. And I remember also being really caught up at the moment when he was stepping out on the wing to put out the fire, and I was just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Awesome. Phil, what stood out to you?
I guess there are the two little moments that, well, one is a little moment with I love samurai stories so much. But there's a great moment where the brother's still alive and attacks him. And he puts his finger to his mouth and is like, shh, and the other one stops. Like, no matter how much they're going at each other's throats, like they can tell when something serious is up and the other one just stops. You know what I mean? They're still brothers. They're not, just that little moment was great. Yeah, they're fighting, but wait a second. Like, come on, you're my brother. Stop. 1 second. Take this seriously for a moment. Great little moment, a little beat. And I loved the visual of Torres flying into enemy territory and all of the explosions everywhere. And it was just like, it was a bit cool. It was like visually overwhelming a little bit. And, obviously this kid's really clever. And that whole bit was really, really beautiful. There was so many beautiful shots and moments. Yeah. And just the immensity of the predators in this. Anytime they stood up
in the Viking scene, holy shit!
Oh my God, he was huge.
Massive.
I was like, sit down, buddy. You're gonna bump your head on the ceiling. Like, yeah, like enormous. And that you also felt that in this film that I haven't really felt in other Predator films before. Was just the immensity of these creatures. It was pretty great.
Definitely.
It doesn't help that in the first movie you have some of the biggest guys possible going up against Kevin Michael Peter Hall, whatever. I can't remember his name. Kevin Peter Hall. He was 7'6", something like. He's really tall, but Arnold's 6'9", so you put those two together, and there's not enough of a difference to really see.
Right. Well, the fact that it was Jean-Claude Van Damme who they picked first, who's shorter than Schwarzenegger.
Listen, though, it gives us the YouTube outtakes with the little red lobster outfit that he was in. It's precious, precious times when you wanna go there. So 3 a.m. on YouTube usually.
I loved so many scenes in this movie, but I guess the one that I just wanted to mention that I thought was so cool was just the opening of this film, and that is. I don't always think it's great to open with a quote, but to put up the Yachu Codex and be like, this is, go among the stars, find the greatest prey, fucking kill it. It was it had real Conan, this is this is life. This is the meaning of life. This is the riddle of steel kind of epicness. And I feel like sometimes in previous Predator films, they lose that feeling that you have to have of sort of that primal tribal, atmosphere. And this really just set the tone like that.
It was simple. Like to your point, it didn't do this there was a time before time. It wasn't a narration. It was literally this is what we know very little about. You probably know the most of all of us, Bryant, because you've read all the comics and everything. But I feel like the culture that is it Yautja? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yautja is so steeped in mystery. There's a lot to build on there, but every time you build on it, you got to do it, in this positive, additive way. And I feel like that quote just kind of gets to the heart of the culture right there, very simply. So that's all I wanted to add.
You know what the quote doesn't get to the heart of, which we see a lot of in this film, is that they are petty ass drama bitches. They are the pettiest little drama bitches I've ever seen in my life. There's no code of honor. You go in the first few Predators, you feel like there's a code or some sort of hunting code. No, there's not. We'll just freeze you, They'll pop you out like some shrimp.
It's a
thaw
stilted
you,
code. It's a
try to
stilted
eat
code.
you. Oh, you're going to get away again? Don't worry. We're going to come after you
I don't know.
again. Like,
I don't know if I agree with that.
That's
there's no winning this.
Yeah, that's the part I didn't care for.
Okay.
One of the parts I didn't care for in the movie is because, like, okay, like a matador, right? If the bull beats the matador, the bull gets to go live on a farm and have a good life, right? When a hunter loses, right? And even like when Danny Glover, right? When he beats the predator, they all come out and they give him a trophy and then they move on. They respect him, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I hate the scene, like Indiana Jones scene of all these frozen people. And you're right. It kind of, I think it kind of cheapens what they do. And it kind of turns them into sort of these petty little bitches, right? Whoever said that.
Well,
because it's like, oh, we lost, like, no, you like,
right.
The thing, like the end of the first Predator, when he does the bomb, he laughs, but there's also that thing of respect, like, okay, you beat me. I'm going to blow the shit out of you because you fucking beat me. But like, I respect you, and every movie, everything had that. And this was just, and it also, to me, lessens the impact of Prey showing her at the end there, frozen. Because it's like, okay, she did all this and accomplished it, and for what?
Yeah,
to be frozen and
to go on to the next round, man.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I'll offer you,
I don't
Steve.
know.
Here's what I'll offer you. I don't know that they'll go this way, and I do think that this is a fair point. I think that, and Phil, I think you're also making you just think that they're also sort of petty bitches because they're massively. The odds are massively in their favor. They have lasers. They're super strong. Sure. Right. Am I getting that, or is it more the frozen people?
I mean, I think it's more that they keep coming back and not letting, like, oh, you won? No, you didn't.
Oh, well, let me offer for both.
We're gonna capture you, and
I agree
you will never win. We will keep hunting you, and if you do beat us once, we will keep coming back. It's not over.
I totally see that point of view, but what I would offer is that for the predator culture, there is nothing greater than dying in the hunt, and while they might be stuck in their point of view, I don't know that they're looking at like this as like, oh, it sucks that we're making you guys do this again. They're looking at it like, you are better than every other animal that lives on your planet, and we are rising you to true greatness by bringing you to our culture. It's like an Aztec thing. It's like, you should want me to take your heart out and give it to my god.
Sure.
I know. For everyone wondering, Bryant actually spent the summer living
living among the Yautja.
He was like performing too. He had his hand out.
Did you like that? I've learned to speak. I've lived with the tribe.
Actually, can I add something to that?
Go ahead, Kraig. Yeah.
One of the things that I think actually plays in favor of the argument against what Phil said, no offense, Phil, is that
I was kind of joking a little bit. But,
I know, but I always say no offense before I really slam, though. So, but like one of the things that I like, and this plays to the storytelling quality of this movie and the world building quality, is that it raises questions and it points to the fact that not only are they messy bitches for sure, they're dramatic as fuck, of course. They never take no for an answer when it comes down to it because they have the technology to beat it. But the reason they have the technology is because they're like these ultimate, eternal students. And I think one of the things that happens maybe in their culture, because we can't really speak to what their culture actually is since we've seen so few tiny glimpses of it, is that we've assumed that there's rules, but maybe what Dan Trachtenberg is trying to say, that there's a bigger rule where, Amber Midthunder's character, whose name I forgot to look up. Naru, right. She impressed them. So they want to continue to learn from her. And it's terrible, but it's sort of, in a way, if you think about it, it's sort of like the scientific method, the way the pharmaceutical stuff works or whatever. It's like, oh, that didn't kill you? Okay, we're going to pump you full of some more stuff and see if that kills you. So I hate to say it, but it's like this, sort of nasty charnel house version of the scientific method where they're just sort of like, cool. You won that round, but it's round robin, by the way. So you're going up to the next, and you're going to face off the next strongest opponent. The next boss.
When you're noting that, I think that the key there is what Steve was talking about earlier, which is the end of Predator 2 and Danny Glover. he gets rewarded. That's how we want, as an audience, we want the movie to end, because the ending where you get a, if they had taken that same movie and slapped a collar on him and booted him up to the ship, you're like, oh, this sucks. Like you leave in a very different way. And typically action movies end that way. You can do a horror movie that has that note where like, it's not over yet.
Not over. Yeah.
But that's not what Predator has been. And so it just ends it on this downer. And so it's just, and then again, you have all these cutscenes. You're like, oh, well, it's a downer, but we're going to get you to watch the next thing, because this is all going to go to a battle royale, and it's going to be Amber Midthunder versus Arnold Schwarzenegger
or floppy Danny Glover, where he's just flopping with his arms.
I'm ready. Like,
this is going weird.
And too old for this shit.
Super sweaty before the fight even starts.
Hey,
you're like, why so sweaty?
We got Adrian Brody somewhere in there.
Right.
Looking real intense.
I just don't want like the Marvel Secret Wars sort of build up to go into everything, right?
No, and that would be weird. That was my main fatigue about it this morning, as I was like, oh, are we looking at actually bringing all these people back for a battle royale? Like, where they're all in the same story? I don't know if I want to see that.
I don't
it wasn't to me, it wasn't a downer, but what Kraig just said, what you just said, that's kind of the worry for me. I don't want the multiverse. In Predator.
Sure.
Like, I love Arnold, I love Dutch, but I don't, I mean, as much as we want it, I don't know that that's really what we need.
Appropriate choice.
If that makes the appropriate choice.
What if it was like he's the guy who frees them all from the ship and dies in the process, or whatever? He gets one last chomp on the cigar, and we all kind of want to see it,
but I think
it's not the battle royale necessarily.
It's been like what, 40 years now, like. That's.
Are you calling me old?
What we've had. No. I was. I saw it when I was 10, or whatever I was. But no, it's not 40 years, because I'm not that old. But it's a long time ago.
1986.
86. Yeah. But the point being
40 years.
Is like, but like we all.
Years?
I think it's something where you live with this stuff for so long.
Yeah.
If you throw Schwarzenegger in there again, it's just fan service, and no one's going to be happy, right? Because we all have this thing in our head of what. And going that direction, you're really like, what does that do for the one? Because I mean, he's like 80 years old at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
you have to do
like
it.
Fox
at
bringing
best.
back. It's like Fox bringing back Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, who I love, but no.
I mean, that said, would you guys live with a scene where he's broke out of cryo freeze a long time ago, and for 40 years he's been living in the bowels of the ship, then we get this cameo with I mean, there are scenarios that I feel like I would write and be like,
I've heard that the Lawrence Fishburne role in
was
Predator
supposed to be Dutch,
originally written to be Dutch. What is interesting about this really is that this has been cooking for so long, because if we go back to the Dark Horse comics, they couldn't use Schwarzenegger, so they created a brother who was a New York cop. And we followed him, and his whole mission was, "Where's my brother? My brother disappeared. Where's my brother?" And the implication was the government found out that the Predators wanted Dutch, and they tried to like give him, and we don't know where he went. Then we had the Predators movie that was like, oh, hey, we have a game preserve where we drop people off from around the world. And that wasn't pulling people out of time, but they were still pulling people from all over the world, because the idea was like, where did you come from? We're from all different locales. Weirdly, and again, this makes it feel like there's a plan going on. The Marvel Comics, which just rebooted the Predator franchise, they brought back Dutch's brother. And the way they did that, the way they did that is they did a story in like the far future, like alien future, where there's someone whose parents were killed by a predator, and she's sort of hunting them down. And she discovered exactly what we saw in this movie. She found that they were like freezing people, and she meets Dutch's brother. So I don't know that that's going to hold up as canon, but I guess what I don't necessarily have interest in some sort of weird battle royale as well, but there is a potential to me of the story of going like, well, where does this go in the culture for like Predator? Like, because you can tell this story for so long, but you all bring up great points. I think something like Schwarzenegger only works as a cameo written very specifically, or maybe only in an animated form. I think you could argue the same about something like Danny Glover, but you don't have to show us every character. It's really going like, well, what do you want to do with this,
Mhm.
and how does that work?
Bryant, this also makes me realize that you've been living with this headcanon that Dutch like got taken along for a very long time. So
Potentially,
Yeah.
yeah.
the idea of
Yeah.
this cryo freeze thing, it makes perfect sense to you. I didn't know any of that. I didn't really read the comics, so I don't. I
It
knew
is
there
out
was
of
a
nowhere,
brother
yeah.
and stuff, but I didn't. So the idea, like, I mean, and maybe it's to Dan Trachtenberg's world building point that he's got this sort of like it's all continuity. It's all in there.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe we don't know, but the thing is, I have a little respect for the fact that like you've lived with that for so long that it's completely normal that there'd be this like cryo freeze with all of them in there. So it's not surprising, and you're not thinking about it in the same way that like I am, where I'm like, oh, are they showing me the building?
I still
You know?
think it's a little. I think I hear the criticism because I think
Yeah,
something like this changes the canon, and it's a little bit to
yeah,
reposition.
I
I honestly feel that way about the Predator. I when they started talking about like we collect DNA from the
Yeah,
spines
yeah.
and like start shooting ourselves up, I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I
yeah,
love this idea.
Yeah.
I got a note about that. I got a
I
note
But
about that for later. Anyway,
but
someone
yeah,
I
I
else say
mean,
something.
like, this is a little bit different, but it's a little closer to where I live, but I can't necessarily
Huh.
fault if anyone feels like, hey, it's messing with, I kind of like the cleanliness of we go, we hunt,
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's it,
Yeah.
But I guess all I'm offering is to think of the Predator almost like the Dothraki from Game of Thrones or something. We have to think of like, well, their culture is not our culture. They value dying on these alien
mhm,
planets, like sometimes
yeah.
that's the best death for them. They're not looking to get away, like or go kick it. And so they might not assume that about us either, or if they
Mhm.
even care at all what
Oh,
their
I
prey.
I want to be clear. I don't mind that they're petty ass bitches.
You kind of
I
like
just
it.
I don't mind. I just thought I'd point it
Sometimes it
out.
pays, right?
Well,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
one
yeah.
other thing I guess that colors and I'll share this because David mentioned it colors my view on that is there's a great line from an Alien Predator comic that was written where one of the characters, I think her name is Machiko Nagiguchi, she goes and lives with the Predators for a number of
Mhm. Oh
years,
yeah, right, right.
and she's like begrudgingly accepted. She has like
Mhm.
a
Hmm.
scar that gets her in,
Yeah,
but everyone's kind of like, "Fuck you, why are you here?"
yeah.
And treats her like shit.
It's high
But
school
like,
bullying.
yeah, but like one of the things they're going to a planet to capture an alien queen, and you're following her voiceover, and she starts talking about how the predators view themselves. And one thing that they have in those comics is they sort of seed different planets. They'll send like these little robot drones, and they'll deposit alien eggs, and then they'll go, a few weeks later and go hunt the aliens. And
AVP.
yeah, and
mm-hmm.
so in their own mythology, they talk about the xenomorphs and say, "Oh, these creatures are so vicious and they spread everywhere, and you just can't stop them." And she's like, "Well, and that's kind of bullshit because it completely covers up the fact that the predators are going to
Mhm.
planets and going, oh, here's a little bit of this, and here's a little bit of this, and
Well,
here's a little
and
bit
the
of this."
engineers are
You
doing
know?
the same thing, which raises a lot of
Right.
questions.
Well, yeah,
Like
and
one
I
of
guess,
the
like we have to accept that they might not be truthful or self-aware
right.
as
Well, but
well.
dude, we live in America. We have a lot of mythology about stuff that we're doing that is absolute
Exactly,
bullshit. So
exactly.
it's pretty clear that that's very easy to pull off on a culture. But um, yeah, I don't know. I this has a lot of implications, I think, for the overall double franchise now, I guess, because what I would like to believe from what I see right now is that Badlands and Romulus and a little bit this movie are kind of making it clear everything is canon and everything is connected.
Mm.
Like Romulus bent over backwards to tie you in the goo in. So it's just like, okay, we're gonna say everything somehow plays in and because of the genetic nature of not just the xenomorphs, but actually also the Yautja, which is an interesting question about how far they go with genetic modification. It brings up a lot of questions about the connections between humans, engineers, and Yautja, and like the humanoid nature of the Yautja. It's kind of, I mean, obviously that's just top movie aliens, Star Trek, put a bridge on their nose, put a funky forehead on them, and they're an alien. But it's like they still look like a human. But are they going to actually go down that route and address that they seem human to a certain extent? I mean, they're heavily modified, obviously, just by the ones we saw in this movie alone.
Definitely, definitely. Well, let's take a quick break. I do want to dive into some of the other themes and sort of some of the changes that we haven't touched on, or not even changes, I guess, just new additions to Predator mythology. But we'll come back in just a minute. Welcome back to our podcast on Predator, Killer of Killers. I wanted to touch a little bit more on themes before we move on, just because there's a few things I don't know, was inspired thinking about this, inspired by what you guys have been talking about in the beginning of the beginning half of this podcast. When I was thinking about themes, I was really looking at how many people are hunters in this movie, you know, and what is it to, why do we hunt? What happens? Like, what changes about us when we are hunted? I think a lot of that really was inspired by that first story where we see someone who, you know, has been traumatized by their parent being killed and then is now on a revenge path and is sort of passing this on. But I'm also struck talking to the four of you about the way the concept of honor comes into all these stories, you know, and the way that it starts to examined at different points. I don't know that the film necessarily, I'm not yet at the point where I would say it has something to say specifically about honor, but we see many variations on honor. And specifically, I guess, when we get with that line about avenge me versus don't avenge me, really seems like a life view change on what is honorable, you know, because she goes from being focused on revenge to being focused on saving those she cares for. So I don't know. I just wanted to take a moment and see what the four of you think. What messages do you take away from this film, and is there anything you think that it specifically says about being a hunter, being hunted, and codes of honor? Steve, why don't you start us off first?
I'm going to say, you know, in terms of hunters and this type of stuff, all these codes of honor are really twisted and sort of bullshit. You know, I mean, let's be fair. I mean, look, from the Predator's point of view, and I did bring that up, the whole thing about them respecting Danny Glover, but these guys, you know, it's like a hunter hunting a deer, right? You're going out there, and some of them going out there with AR-15s, and, like, you know, they've got bear piss all over them, and like they've got every advantage in the world. And every now and then, a deer will gut them or something because, you know, they tripped or whatever. And they go, "Oh, that deer, man, good job, dude." And you know, honorable. But it's really
we'll put a TED on our wall and think about what a great deer it was.
That really honorable bullshit, deer tastes amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the same thing with Ursa. It's like this kind of view of honor is also very twisted because, you know, for her, you know, honors her whatever 10 or 12-year-old son, like, you know, gutting this dude. Okay, you did the honorable thing. Is that really what we want to consider honor? I don't know. Maybe if you're a Viking and that's the world you live in.
Hey, man, he stood up for his mom.
That's right. But I think we've progressed. So when you're looking at, like, the Predator thing, like, it is a very kind of twisted view of honor, but it also fits because they're hunters, right? So you look at the guy in the Viking, he's got that punching thing, and then, you know, they've got all these, they have every advantage in the world, you know? So when they do lose, they're like, oh, fuck, you know, like, how did we, you know, there is that, but it's, you know, so they kind of in a place where, like, fuck, you know, we kind of got to give it to you, Danny, you know, it's, but we're
they almost can't. Yeah,
they almost for later, you know.
Exactly. Like, good job again, good job, but on to the next round. But still, I also think
it's like the animal. We're still going to eat you at some point.
Right. Yeah. But I guess you know, thematically, it's just that I don't know how much honor it happens to come into play. I think in these three stories, perhaps, and maybe one could say Billy standing on the log in the first movie and cutting his chest. It's like, it seems kind of unnecessary when he does it. A lot like Michael Bihn's sacrifice in this movie, by the way. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's his concept of honor, and each character has their own version of it. And like you say, Steve, it's bullshit, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever actually read the Code of Bushido for Samurai, but you're
Yeah,
like,
I have.
come on, or just watch a handful of samurai movies. You're like,
Yeah.
this sounds fucking stupid. You know, it doesn't take long to realize this is an irresponsible, like, waste of life, you know, some of these codes of honor. So I fully agree with that. So but I guess what I'm getting at, though, is like, it is inescapable, though, that the codes of honor can't escape I hate to say it, the triumph of the human spirit. It's like it's the technology be damned. It's in the spirit of the opponent is indomitable, you
Right.
know, and that's kind of what it always says. And that's why Torres, I think, is maybe, you know, a standout. It's weird that I didn't want to like that character, but I really ended up liking him a lot because like he's not a hunter at all. He's the only one who isn't. But then you think about it, like if you think about curiosity and the educational nature of the predators themselves, and you start tying that into becoming a better hunter, you're like, well, I guess he is peripherally somehow weirdly connected to that theme. I just there's definitely no direct link that I could
You know
identify.
what? Where I saw the honor for him coming specifically was when you talked about the Michael Biehn character. And I didn't see it when
Yeah, yeah.
he before he dies, he says something like you're a flyer. You are actually like gives him essentially like you've gone from I thought you were a novice, you were a green to hey,
Hmm.
you're a warrior
Yeah.
like us, you know.
Yeah.
And but I mean it is unique because it's a warrior through a vehicle, which is
And
something that we
ingenuity.
haven't
He's just
read.
not a hunter. I don't think he's a hunter. That's what I'm saying. I definitely
Yeah.
think that, you know, the honor element is, you know, thorough with that
Sure,
character.
but
I
you're
just think
right. He's
that
not a hunter.
he's not even, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's
He's
so
a
But
peripheral at
soldier,
best.
if
he
that.
just
Yeah.
kind of put himself in that situation that he
He
wasn't
stepped
supposed to
up.
be in. Yeah.
And so honor is all
So
for that
yeah.
character in
Yeah.
terms of, I
Mhm.
guess, humanity. So who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
that's the purest, and
And
that's maybe what the movie is saying. You know, is it like taking care of each other is the highest form of honor?
I want to
Wow,
add
did
to
I stumble on that? All right.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
you did.
no, I think you're honest because what I wanted to add as I was listening to you guys talk about that is I think it's important now to also look at the timeline and how these are people plucked from different points in history. Ursa is arguably the most primitive culturally, so the cycle of violence, the
Mhm.
you killed my father, I will kill you, and that sort of progression. The second story is a more cultured samurai tale. There's this fucked up sense of honor, but it is also ostensibly about the brother who chooses not to fight his brother, even though he is told by his father to do so. The father expects them to clash, and he
Great
turns away
parenting.
from it.
Yeah.
Right, and so then Torres is actually
Bryant,
the very
future
American.
plans.
What?
Sorry.
He's just
Bryant
offering
has twins.
parenting advice.
Nobody's
I mean,
talked about how this movie's about twins who fight each other, and Bryant
Right.
has twins. I mean, we should really get into this. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Please continue.
You're fine. But as you guys were talking about Torres and the honor, it struck me that that's such a very American view. It's very Americana that like that's why it's World War II. It's not Vietnam. It's the war that we all know who the bad guys were and who the good guys were. It's easy to cheer. It's easy to know that you were doing the right thing, that you were stepping up. All of that fits into our sort of cultural knowledge of World War II, right? Like from our side. So I think those all make sense, that there's a reason that you go, from the most primitive and violent culture to, something that's maybe one of the last conflicts that we could really be like, well, we vanquished evil there,
yeah.
Give it a couple of years in America anyway.
I know, right? I mean, we kind of, sort of, but yeah, it is very much like Return of the Jedi or the end of Star Wars or whatever. We could look at that and see that. And so the honor in Torres' character there makes a lot more sense in that context. So each one has its own special little context and they all fit together.
Definitely. Phil, what do you have to add on this theme?
Sure. This talk about honor is really fantastic. Kurosawa also spit in the face of this perverse idea that samurai had of honor. Like every single one of his movies rips that apart, rips it into shreds.
Yeah, Jimbo.
And Yojimbo, Seven Samurai, this sense of honor that's just torn asunder. It's beautiful. Yeah. There's a great line that the kid has just before he dies, and he looks at his mom and he says, "Did you kill the monster?" And it's a remarkably tragic line, like beautifully emotional. Again, so much emotion in that line, but it is talking about this sense of that violence is honor, that fighting is honor, that passing in each instance, in each story, we see a sort of parental figure passing down what they believe that honor to be. And in Torres's, it's no, you have to fix something to be honorable. You have to repair something to be able to fly. And it's a 180 degree turn from what we're seeing from the other two parental figures. That she the mother Viking comes to understand it at the end after what she's lost. I think the God, the samurai ninja story is so wonderful. But I mean, obviously just dealing with samurai, you're dealing with honor, and in a sense of when an honor's been besmirched, when you want to come back and pay back that honor, but it's not necessarily about taking someone's life. So there's something interesting about that as well.
Holy shit!
A tick for a tat.
You just made me realize something. There is a flow to the vengeance mindset. It's firm with Ursa. Yep. It's wavering with Kenji and Kenichi or whatever his name is. And then it's not there at all.
It's about repairing and fixing. The final one is
I just love that arc. I didn't see that
step. And then
that's the dad's one of the dad's things too, is listen, right?
What can I say? Yeah, listen, stop and listen.
And that's the only way that it's only a way that the three of them, I hadn't really put that together either, but the three of them, you could argue that what they're confronted with is like what the honorable thing is to fight to the death and then fight this predator.
Yeah.
And what they do is push back on that, and Torres is able to convince everyone to
and Kraig uses that sort of it's a really beautiful thematic arc.
Kraig, your thought just made me think that, again, going back to my little nit about the animation, is that maybe that was very intentional, because the rigid Viking, a little more fluid, the samurai ninja story, and then flying, is the most fluid and airy of. I'm not saying that's intentional, but it's a nice little thing. If it was, that would be.
And another reoccurring theme, actually, which shows up in Prey, is that every time they're defeating the Yautja with their own weapons. Which I think is another nice reoccurring sort of theme of this violence is going to hurt you more than it hurts us. And you see that with the mom. It hurt, you see that with the brother. He does end up losing his brother. And then we don't know what happens to the father, of course, but there's not as much weight to the end of Torres's story. It's much more of a victorious, nothing's been lost. You know what I mean? Like, even though the rest of his platoon or the soldiers have all fallen, there's still a much more hopeful kind of end to that story than there is with the other two.
I liked that at the end of his story, he gets something that the others do not, which is a little scene after, like presumably after the war is over. He is alone in his shop or working on a car, and so that's something a little different that the others don't get. And I like that they gave us that, because it showed he's a soldier, he survived the war, he fought the fight, he beat the hunter, but he's now alone. He's isolated in some way, like a lot of veterans coming back from a war where you find that the country isn't what isn't treating you the way you thought they would, or whatever. There's just a lot of uncertainty, and so there's sort of an isolation and a loneliness that comes with that. And I felt like that, like you said, we don't know what happened to his dad exactly, but he's alone, he's not with his dad in that scene, and I think that's significant.
And we don't get crop circles without that scene either.
Yes, we don't. I did like the crop circles. That was fun. Let me ask this, because I think it bounces well off of where we are in the discussion. But it's our 15th anniversary of Fanbase Press. We're focusing on community as a theme this year. There's a bunch of things that we're doing, so you can check those out by looking at the Build Your Community initiative at fanbasepress.com. But with stories like this, I really have been trying to look through the prism of community and see is there something that this story says or reflects, and my initial thoughts were comparisons almost to like Watchmen, the idea that the Predator unites humanity, essentially, that we come from different
unlikely
backgrounds,
allies too.
Right.
Yeah,
it's an outside threat. I know Sigourney Weaver also mentioned that the xenomorph she saw as an equalizer in the sense that it made the genders equal. It didn't matter if you were a woman or a man. The alien was so powerful that it could
Same
kill
as the
you no matter
Terminator.
what. Yeah.
Absolutely will not stop.
Um, but then there's also all this that we're talking about, this idea of repairing or not finding a different form of honor, going away from the violence or towards civilization, which it seems like the Predators have gone the opposite direction within their culture. I say that just to pose the question: what do each of you think that this story, if anything, says about community, or the importance of community within our society? Dave, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably just going to repeat a few things, but I think on the basic surface level, you just said the word community, and this is a movie that revolves around three unlikely allies having to work together. To your Watchmen point, but they each hold a key to something that's important. You know, there's the pilot. You know, there's literally the shield who sacrifices herself. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's the sword who cuts them free. There's the bullet that flies them off. So this is a message about how we're stronger together. I mean, and that sort of is interesting I know it's so basic in some level. We see it in so many films. Um, but the idea of the hunter as this sole predator that's coming amongst and,
Sure.
hunting and, getting his trophies. And this is kind of speaking that like, look, but we can overcome that. We have to work together. We have to go transcend the boundaries of language and culture and time even, and figure out something. And then I think under that, I think as we've been speaking about, all of the stories have to say something about the cycles of trauma and violence, and so I think there's a big thematic message in there too. But we've kind of covered that already. But it's everyone's approach to it and everything. So yeah, I think that'd be my answer. That I think there is something in the plot that sort of suggests that community transcends and can beat back the bad, the hunter, whatever. The flock can survive in numbers. But yeah, I think also within us we have to look at each other. So soldiers can look to other soldiers for trauma bonding, for PTSD, for like, kind of like therapy, and
Right.
and understanding one another. Hey, you're not alone. You've gone through this horrible thing too. And I think that's baked into those stories as well.
That's all great points. Phil, what are your thoughts on the concept of community when we're looking at this film?
I mean, yeah, I think when you get to the end of the film, the community that's built, there's definitely like a hopeful message there. But I think the film also, as far as community goes, shows how it can be toxic, that you sometimes have to live up to a standard that may not be healthy. Whether it's revenge, the kid killing the guy, the brother turning on brother, like they're all wanting to be a part of a community and to fit in. And
Yeah.
that means relinquishing a part of who you are and what you can bring as an individual, and essentially shaming or killing through killing someone else, which is very much how the predators, think. It's this, toxic form of community that they have, in a sense. And again, it's not until you get to the Torres thing where the sense of community is very different. Like we fight together, we fight as one. We are here to bolster each other up against the enemy. There is it just feels like there's a different sense of community by the time we get to that story that carries through to the final act and confrontation. So again, just following the arc of what I was talking about earlier, I think that you can follow that arc of what community represents too throughout the film, and how that sort of shifts a bit.
No,
Um,
that's all very interesting, and it also makes me, going back to the Predator point of view. We definitely see it. What we imagine, I guess we only know so much, but what we see looks very toxic. It does not look
yeah,
enjoyable. But
yeah,
I also then go, how does the Predator culture view the idea of community within their society? Is
mhm,
it even something? Because clearly they have a tribe. They value community to some degree, but
yeah.
they also value, their individuality to some degree as well. Kraig, what are your thoughts on the idea of community in this film?
Actually, it occurs to me that one of the main focuses of the thematic structure of this movie, all of the community elements hinge on actually understanding each other, like stopping, breathing, having a moment of empathy. And again, not falling into the toxic pattern that you're stuck in because you grew up in it or whatever.
Sure.
Like we all have grown to understand growing up from 20th century parents. But I think that there's a really palpable element of that transcends perhaps the we have to work together theme, which is the obvious theme of this movie, and
Right.
the typical, anytime I guess more than one person survives a predator tale, which I think is maybe only a couple. Yeah, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting that this is such a moment for that to be a strong theme in a story. I realize this is a very tangential story that's not going to have like a giant public impact. Like, hey, a little understanding and empathy will go a long way, everybody, to work towards working together and having a better community. I realize things are a little loud for this to make a breakthrough, but I like, again, going back to what we were saying, kind of about the quality of the science fiction. It's like, thank you for giving us some science fiction that has some subtext, some things that we can chew on for a while. I watched this twice and I wasn't disappointed the second time. I saw some stuff and I appreciated the deeper elements more. So I just feel like, man, now is the time for these themes and this kind of science fiction.
Yeah.
So
It's really interesting in juxtaposition to the first film too, which I do think that I tend to be a pretty ardent defender of that film. I feel like it's more layered than most Arnie films.
does it need it? Does that movie
100%.
require defense?
Sometimes I've encountered some who think it's just an action film, and I think it's a little. John McTiernan seems to add little more layers and depth to his
that
films.
is a perfect movie, and there are very few
Well,
of those.
then I don't need to defend it on this podcast.
Not to me.
But,
Predator 2, we can go at Predator 2 if you want to.
I'm not naming names. I'm not naming names.
I want
But I guess I was just going to offer. It's really interesting in that film that Schwarzenegger, Dutch's character, is like does not let the other survivor, Anna, the girl, participate. Essentially, he's like, don't pick up a weapon. He kicks the gun out of her hands.
I mean, she's a girl. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Not where I was going with it.
It was the 80s. Come on.
I mean, he really, the end of that film is like, you have to become as primal as the predator to defeat it. You have to throw down your trappings. You paint yourself.
No, I would say more. You have to be as resourceful as the predator. Sure. I think that's what he learned.
Resourceful as well, but also you challenge this beast by lighting a torch and screaming into the jungle.
I think I have to go to the mat with you on this one, because the whole element of the movie where they cast all these strong men to face off with the predator, and their strength is absolutely like ineffective on every level. Get torn to pieces.
Yeah.
And so primal maybe in the sense of I've got to become a part of the land and become a part of nature, because that's actually definitely what he does. But I don't know, man. I think it's more using his ingenuity over his strength.
No, I agree with that. I just think it's more he goes one-on-one with the predator, and it's the idea is it's going to be me, it's going to be him.
But he doesn't. It's not punchy though at all.
No, it's not physical prowess or physical strength.
The predator punches, beats the shit out of him. Actually, yeah.
Steve, what are your thoughts on Community in regards to Killer of Killers?
I mean, the same thing everyone else is saying. Communities can be toxic. I mean,
yeah, of course.
But I think, the ultimate message is that, people are stronger together than they are fighting over petty things, So, and it goes to a lot of what, everyone else has been saying, but, yeah. I don't want to keep repeating kind of.
No, that's fine.
This does make me want like Predator Jane Goodall.
Oh, you know what? But I am going to say, I think, the original Predator film, that's good, actually, Predator Jane Goodall. But I think the original Predator film, and it does get a lot of a knock for characterization and things like that, but it is a really, and McTiernan is a great director. It is a really, that film is about how men communicate with each other, and it's a very different type of character, the way Blaine and Mac's relationship, all the different relationships they're actually like communicating with each other without actually doing it. and it's through actions and kind of like even when they ignore each other, it's that whole thing of like, men can't kind of open up with their feelings and all this stuff, and that's kind of what that's a lot of the character work in that movie. So
you're saying
it's
tobacco spitting isn't like an emotional expression?
I was thinking men say I love you by
it's
getting
like,
a scorpion off your back.
Yeah,
like what he,
with a knife.
With a knife.
Yeah, exactly. How else would you say it?
Right.
How else would you say it? Steve, I would like to talk to you about BetterHelp.
If you had a scorpion on your back, I'd stab it for you.
But it's really the anytime that helps.
It's kind of like, I can't tell you how much I love you, but I can spit tobacco on your food.
Or tell you the worst possible P joke ever said.
Right. Yeah.
And by P, I mean abbreviation.
Yes. Oh. No, I definitely appreciate all that about that film as well. Let me ask you this, Steve. And I'll go around again, but I'll start with you. You've done a number of Kickstarters. You're a comic book writer. Anthologies are huge, in this creative environment. So, what can we as storytellers take away from Killer of Killers to essentially sharpen our own storytelling kit? What worked for you or didn't work for you that you would say is something that we can learn as storytellers from this film?
Oh, that's good. So like I said, I like how, it was really well done in terms of how they connected everything and how they brought everything together. But I think also in terms of hitting those beats, in a very kind of short period, it's a really great, as a film, it's a really great exercise of character building, in an anthology setting where you don't have a lot of space, you don't have a lot of time, and you really need to cut to the bone, right? Like the stuff with Ursula, it's straight to the point. You get to know her, you know who she is, and it's all there in the dialogue. Boom, boom, boom. There's nothing wasted there. So it's a really it does that really well. And for anthologies, you rarely see that kind of tightness, especially across the whole thing. So the fact that they were able to do that for those 3 small segments and then bring it together, I think was really well done, and really definitely if you're looking for inspiration for that kind of thing, this is a really great film to look at.
It's interesting to think about too. When anthologies that we see in comics are mostly collaborative projects, different people taking different stories.
Yeah.
Maybe part of the success in this is that this is a single vision over the anthology stories themselves.
Oh, for sure. If you have a through line, it's much easier than one artistic style and one right. Yeah, you're definitely starting ahead. Because any anthology where you have any number of creators, you're going to be banging up against different styles, different writing styles,
sure,
and whatnot. Even those like Predator anthologies that Marvel's been doing, Black, White, and Alien, Black, White, and Red, whatever.
Yeah.
Like some of those stories hit, some of them not so much. And again, it goes back to the point. It's that economy of storytelling.
Yeah.
Which in anything, like you have 8 pages to do something, and you could see like where some people are really kind of like, especially if they've worked for 2000 AD or whatever, like that's just their meat and potatoes right there. Like they know it. Yeah. Where you see some writers struggle, it just becomes a kind of like, they'll do like a quote over the whole thing or something where they're kind of struggling to see how can I actually
tell a story with this. Yeah.
Tell a story. And
yeah.
So it's tough though. It is.
It is.
It's definitely, it's not easy. So.
Dave, what are your thoughts on what we can take away from storytelling?
Yeah, I'll tag in there as somebody who's contributed to a lot of anthologies, and in fact, Spectral is an anthology that me and Chris Anderson did all the stories within.
Right.
So kind of coming at it 2 different ways. I think what Steve said is absolutely true. It's a lot of it is about the economy of storytelling, and also picking your moments, picking your subject, kind of you have to know how big a bite to take in a story like that. And so while I still kind of disagree that I don't think this is an anthology film, and I'll tell you why. Because there are 3 individual stories, but none of them resolves on their own. They only resolve in the final act, where all 3 stories come together. So in my mind, that's a bit different than an anthology story where each one is a complete tale. Because I don't think Ursa's tale is complete at the end when she's on board the ship and then they move to the Japanese story, right? Because there's something that still has to happen with her. That's what I felt. I felt as a viewer going like, well, wait, there's something missing. Her story didn't end there. It's not done.
Yeah, definitely a continuing story.
It's like this arrested development. It's like mid-arc, and it's sort of almost frustrating to move on to the next story that way. And so that's one where I was really on guard, wondering if this was all going to come together at the end. And so I'm so impressed by the fact that the final act does bring all the threads together. And so that's why I don't necessarily see it as an anthology.
Okay.
I mean, that's, my terminology for it, but like Spectral, it does have the graphic novel that I did with Chris Anderson. It's got individual short stories that were constructed first. They were constructed first as short stories, so they are complete in themselves. Then we figured out a framing sequence that kind of tells another story that kind of does weave them all together, but they're not necessarily. It's still an anthology in that I feel like it was added value, because for anybody listening to this is unfamiliar, we started releasing these as little 12-page mini comics that we would sell at conventions individually, but we got such a good reaction to it, we decided to put together like 6 of them. And when I decided that I wanted to do a Kickstarter, I wanted to add value to it. I don't want somebody to just buy something they could have bought from me individually at a convention. So I wanted a meaningful story that wove in between them. I don't know that we succeeded or not, but I like it. But my point there is that, like, the way I came up with it, I feel like Dan and Micho, or the writers, they conceived this as a whole. Like, yeah, we're going to do a Viking, we're going to do a samurai, we're going to do a World War II pilot, but all these stories are going to come together, converge. And so to me, that's just that's a little bit different. But just in the original question of what can we learn from this, Steve's point about the economy of storytelling is one of the I was stunned that they brought it all together as satisfyingly as they did in the final act, because I didn't see that part coming. I'm like, are they gonna? No, they're not. There's no way. And then suddenly it all worked. And so I'm still super impressed by that. And it did feel a bit like some of the better comic books I've read, where because comic book writers and artists understand that there is such an economy of, you have a set amount of pages and you can't deviate. It's not like a novel where you can add 20,000 words. Your page count it matters. And so you have to pick those right beats, the right amount of story. All of that is so, important in that moment. And I think that they did a fantastic job with that in this.
Definitely agree with that. Phil, what do you think we can take away storytelling wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think economy of story is a good lesson. With the feature film, you get your first act. When you're writing a short film, you don't get your first act. You have to jump into your second act, somewhere into your second act. That is, I find a lot of people that write short films or write anthology films will come at it from a very dialogue heavy place, and that's fine. If you want to write a short that's very dialogue heavy, that's great. But it's hard to get to the heart of the matter if you're just going to talk in a short the whole time. Action will define a character much more quickly than a character just talking about what they think or what they feel, and in a more interesting way. With the Vikings, they talk about stuff. There's exposition, but the action is there to back it up. And we jump right into how these characters are responding to what's in front of them. And I think even in a dialogue-driven short or anthology, that dialogue better be action-based, moving forward, responding to. carrying us through something, and not just sitting and talking, about something. And I think, you have time to do that in a feature or a fuller story, and you really don't. And what I saw in this film was, I saw a lack of that, a complete lack of just sitting and talking about something. Every line of dialogue was an action forward. There was always some sort of like visual element moving us forward. Like the whole samurai thing, there's almost not a line spoken,
Yeah.
which I loved. It's all very much action oriented. You're dropped into the middle of what the conflict is between these two boys, and then into the middle of the conflict is as they're adults. You're dropped in, and I think that is one of the biggest things that you can take into an anthology, is dropping the audience in. You don't have to worry about over explaining the situation, over explaining the conflict. We'll understand it if you drop us into the middle of it and make it very clear through everybody's actions what's going on. That would be my, and this movie does it wonderfully. So
Damn you, Phil, is what I'm going to say before I ever get asked the question, because you just stole so much of what I was going to say and said it almost exactly how I was going to say it. But a lot of what you're talking about comes from restraint and confidence and
Yes.
knowing your own characters ahead of time so that you can pull all of that stuff off.
There you go.
And like, because I don't get to say some of the stuff that Steve said and that Phil said that I was definitely going to say, you guys, damn you. I mean, that's kind of what it all comes from. The backbone is this level of confidence. Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one having cat drama, by the way. That's why I keep like looking off to the side. But yeah, no, I mean, it's, I don't know. That's what I think goes back to Trachtenberg, and Bryant was kind of alluding to this too. Is like, you're in safe hands because he's confident in this shit. He knows what he's doing. I don't even think it matters, like talking about the marketing element of this or whatever. I don't think that the franchisability of this matters to him. I think he saw a hole and he saw a way. He's like, all this stuff's always been connected between these two franchises. Like, why the fuck are we like dancing around? Let's just find some interesting ways to actually, confront it and do something very interesting with it. And so he's just got all this confidence because he just knows what he's trying to do with it, And I just really respect that a lot. And then that's not the easiest thing to pull off as a creator yourself, But again, it comes from that knowledge, and like write it on a 3x5 card and put it above your desk. Restraint is king. Less is more, You can really get a lot more out of showing things through action and revealing character through like Kenji, when he's in the bell tower trying to stop the three guys from ringing the bell.
Beautiful.
There's a lot of character play in that.
Yes.
You're really like, wait, what's his intentions here? Oh, I see what his intentions are here.
Yeah.
Like it all becomes clear as that plays out. And that's some really solid writing, even though some writers, more literary writers, wouldn't call it writing. But it is. It's great writing.
Did any of you hear that sorry, I just wanted to really quickly say there was a draft with a lot more dialogue in it. Apparently, I was reading
interesting.
earlier, and they decided to cut it all. So, but that's exactly to both of your points that it didn't need it, and they had the confidence and the craft to realize that they didn't need it, and it's stronger without it. That is a capable storyteller.
And sometimes you need that draft to come to understand your characters.
Yes.
Right. And you can definitely see that writing that draft with all that dialogue and then getting rid of it, it helped them find their characters that much more.
Absolutely.
And it also like showing in a way in this thematically, there's a great scene that I just remembered where he's looking at the ninja is looking at the image of his father, and the predator comes tearing through it.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you're like, and then the father is the predator. The predator is the father. They're working on at the same level of what honor is. And it's just a beautiful visual moment to show you what's happening thematically, not only overall, but with how the brother sees what's happened, what he came from. And again, you don't have to stop the film and talk about it because it's apparent, like you feel it, and it's echoed in different ways, which I think in an anthology, you have to remember to echo things in different ways throughout each piece. If you're echoing the same thing over and over again in the same way, the audience will get really bored and be 10 steps ahead of you, and which you don't want. Anyway, I was just reminded of that little moment.
No, those are both great points. And I think honestly the confidence is really key here. Just the thing that I enjoy as a fan here is that the the canon connections, the little nods do not seem to be done from a fan service specific point of place. They're done
Yeah.
from a storytelling point. And I would guess what I would point at is there's a there's this really interesting thing. If you watch the end of Prey, where during the credits, he kind of points to the direction towards this. He does this little like shadow play where
Yep.
the predators come back and there's further trouble. And that's sort of we get the idea that Nauru is not done. This is the next step of that. And I felt the same way with the Adolini, Raphael Adolini pistol. It shows
Oh,
up there,
yeah.
but it's not like,
Right.
hey, look, the pistol, but we are following this pistol now through the history of these movies. We know where it started, when it went to the
Right.
Predators. We know when it's going to get to Danny Glover, and it just adds a little bit of connective tissue that feels genuine as opposed to just like, oh, hey, did you see this in the corner of the screen or something?
But if you don't get it,
It does
the
not
story
affect
is still
anything.
perfectly serviceable.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't hinge on that, that's
Yeah.
where writers and creators go wrong.
Right. And when it goes bad, it'll be revealed that the Danny Glover thing was actually a trade where he gave them his like 45 with a scope. And so that's the one that pops up later. Yeah, no. For
The
sure.
The Adolini pistol actually is a form of honor and it bestowed upon.
Yeah. Here's this piece of shit that's really hard to load and not very effective unless you club somebody over the head with it.
If you want to know how it could go wrong, and I hate to go back to the Predator, but the Predator, there's still people out here that have not heard this story. I find the Predator almost had like three different post-credit sequences. The
Yeah.
idea was that they went like, hey, there is something called the Predator Killer, and that is something that we're gonna get. It's a MacGuffin we're gonna get, and it's gonna allow us to kill predators. In the final movie, the final cut, it ends up being like this weird Iron Man
Yeah.
suit
So
that
stupid.
jumps on.
Yeah.
But they went through going, maybe it's Dutch who comes out of this canister.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it's Ripley who comes out of this
Oh,
canister. And maybe it's a grown-up Newt who comes out of this canister.
Oh,
But in the 21st century, like what?
I mean, maybe they were playing
That
with these
movie-
frozen characters again, but you're going like, well, what? Did you pull them out of the few? I don't know. The point being, they did not care. The point was that we
they
just
didn't
wanted
have
you
a
to
vision.
go,
That movie's
Yeah.
rough, dude.
Ripley or
such a bad
whatever.
movie.
The Thing that I've seen before,
Oh my God, it'd be funny. John Carpenter's The Thing just comes scurrying out.
That will definitely kill some predators, man.
Tie it all
That'll do
together.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of all of that, let's just talk real quickly about where each of you would like to see the Predator films go. Even if even if we're not you can speculate about where this one's heading specifically. But I guess I would ask is where would you like to see the Predator series go? We're gonna go to Alien Planet next, it seems like, and into the future. But we've also got this animated precedent now. We could revisit other times. We could go back to other characters. We could have a connection with the Alien universe, or we could go back to grassroots. Just a live action predator hunting something type story. What do each one of you want, or are you done? Are you reaching your predator fill at this point? Kraig, start us off.
Well, I'm not reaching my Predator fill at all. Actually, I'd say this completely revitalized this and Prey have revitalized my interest in the franchise in a huge way. Um, I think what I'd like to see is further specialization of the concept in the same way as there's a pilot predator where that's his weapon. I loved that. Like on second viewing, that may be the biggest takeaway that I had, which is like, I mean, again, I love, and I forgot to finish my thought on this earlier. I would love a whole bunch of just John Wick style, like this badass versus this badass predator. Like that's totally doable. We can do that forever, but obviously that doesn't have a lot of legs dramatically. So I would love to see more of like, I don't, this is a dumb example because I can't figure out how it would work on first blush, but like the heist Predator, or the, whatever, just like how some version where it makes more sense, like the way that Torres is the gadget guy versus the gadget side of the Predator, he wins out. It's like, well, what is another version of that? Like, what is a deeper version? And I'm sure there's another filmmaker, maybe a writer out there who's like, oh yeah, I could totally run with that. Like, it doesn't have to be lame. It could actually be really smart. It could be quieter even. I mean, like, it could be the under the skin of a Predator movie. Who the fuck knows? You could really take it somewhere truly alien. I mean, this movie raises a few questions for me too, which I thought was cool because, like, one, like, is this the same game preserved planet as Predators? It kind of looks like it with the multi-moon thing.
Sure.
They're very I watched the opening of Predators last night and I was like, hey, they're really similar looking environments, but it isn't lush, so it doesn't seem like it's the same planet, but it could be the same solar system, perhaps, But then I asked if it was the Yautja homeworld, and from our last episode or the one before that, I'm like kind of fascinated with the Yautja homeworld. I know it would maybe blow the wind out of the sails to show the Yautja homeworld. I get it. But it's also like, I kind of want to scratch the itch. I kind of want to know more. I kind of want to see something. And like, this movie has the criminal, what I assume was like a criminal Yautja or a Yautja that wouldn't honor the code, where they blew his head off. Yeah. And I was like, huh, so they have laws and they have people who deviate from this whole thing that we've seen. So like, I don't want to ruin anything, but I do kind of want to know more. So that's my general
Kraig,
thought on that.
I'm always go back to the comics. I think there's so many places we could go with this franchise, but it makes me think of examples like Evan Dorkin wrote a Predator Bad Blood series where it's essentially a Predator who's like, I don't give a shit about honor. I just kill people and take their skulls. Another Predator comes and he's kind of like, I'm the sheriff. You fucked up. I'm going to punish you for breaking our rules. And it all takes place during a lawyer's like business retreat. They're all out at a paintball like arena, and they all have like these jacked up guns. One guy has a minigun for paintball because they can spend whatever they want on like.
That's a little fan servicey, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But it has this real like tongue in cheek, like, oh my God, all these guys are out there with these guns. None of them shoot bullets. And then there's this Predator who's just like chopping him to pieces, and another Predator who's coming to like chop him to pieces. And you get into places where you're like, okay, well, if that's just a little bit of thinking about like what can we do with that franchise, I think you're suggesting a lot of there is a lot. There's got to be other stories that can be done. Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Especially since I'm the one who kind of said like, I don't want to know where it's going. So it puts me in a funny position. But also, as Kraig was talking, I was thinking that it reminds me of like the setup of this film reminds me a bit of like back in, I don't know, 2010, somewhere around there was a reality show called Deadliest Warrior where they do like Spartan versus Apache or whatever, and they like match up two different warrior cultures from around the world and then use like ballistics tests or whatever, like to kind of figure out like, oh, they would have this impact with this weapon and all that stuff. And I loved watching those. They were fun. That said, I do not think that a continued anthology of like, let's pull out a medieval knight, I think that could get old very fast. Sure. I think the beauty of this film was that it actually brought all those together and kind of went in a different direction. So I guess what just my own interest as a viewer right now would kind of be along the same lines as what Kraig was talking about. And it's a slippery slope. It's kind of like the will they, won't they love story where when they finally do get together, you're like, well, that wasn't that great, or that's over now. Like
the Predator and the Xenomorph kissed. Oh man.
But I do want to see more of the culture. And I think what came out in this conversation with you all is that the culture itself is contradictory, much like a lot of human culture and a lot of human laws and societies and things like that. So I said it as a joke earlier, but I kind of do want Jane Goodall Predator.
I do too.
I want the anthropological Predator, or maybe it's a human that goes in and lives with the Predators like you were talking about in the comics that can kind of start to understand this, which also allows us to do a commentary on this whole macho alpha hunter thing maybe is toxic and messed up. It allows us a little commentary while also kind of peeling back a culture that we can make up and kind of use fantasy or sci-fi tropes to kind of like explore what a culture could be like. I mean, when I say that, it starts to sound a little more like Star Trek, but I think
it's
that'd
Kevin
be fun.
Costner's Dances with Predators.
Yeah. I mean, so I'd be curious. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Predator homeworld, but getting more into the makeup of the Predators, that would be the way that I would go forward with it, versus like, what's the new warrior we can throw at it? What's the new xenomorph we can throw at it? Because that's just plot based and it's going to get old real fast.
Well, and that's a continuation of like, we got stuck in that, like, oh, it's a bigger Predator.
Exactly.
For a while. And I agree with you. I think it's this difficult balance of like, how much do you reveal? How much do you keep mysterious? But I think it would be great if they approached if we're going to do an alien crossover, let us start to view the predator culture through their relationship with that creature. What does that creature mean to them? What does it represent? What role does it play within their society? And go from there. Steve, what are your thoughts on what you want out of a predator film these days?
I agree with Dave. I agree with what Kraig is saying. I'd like to see more of the culture. I'd like to see it go to different places. I love Predator. I know all of you Predator, but if we're being honest, it's unfortunate. It's a thin concept, right? It wears thin after a while. And part of the thing, I like this anthology, but if they go back to the well of like, hey, we're going to fight humans again, I would like a Predator to win. Like it's getting now to the point of like, okay, we get it. Like I've seen that so many times now and there's the way they open things up in this. I'm interested in seeing more of it. I want to know.
Yeah.
I do want to know more about the culture, because I think what little we've seen, it raises a lot of questions. Like, is everybody a hunter? Are there people in the whole world working in offices, running numbers, seeing how many spaceships we can build today, how much these cryo facilities are.
How do they build spaceships? Where's all this tech come from?
I mean, there's actually a lot. There's a lot of interesting stuff you could do there, exploring them. And I'd like to kind of see it, maybe take a break from the whole, like, human versus predator. And obviously, and that looks like where Badlands is going. So I'm kind of excited to kind of see where that's going. But I think they've smartly set the stage of saying, hey, here's what you love about Predator, but there's also all of this now that we can explore. And my hope is that they do kind of like take that track and give us, open up that world a bit and see where it goes.
When Predator Met Sally, directed by Steve Prince.
Actually, you know what's funny though?
I'll have what she's having.
A very similar 80s movie that for me as a teenager, I loved. But then it's very hard to have good sequels for it. Highlander. Great concept, great backstory. It opens up so many questions. And then I think maybe the TV series was probably the closest to like executing on that, but like a bunch of bad movies. So I'm Steve, I totally get that. Like Predator is a difficult one. You don't want to oversaturate it. I don't want a Star Wars treatment where we got like everything constant, the whole world fleshed out and everything. It's we got to be careful with it. You're absolutely right.
And it's true. Like I love Highlander.
That first one, right?
The first one, and it's a perfect movie for what it is. But like the second one is like, oh my, we don't even need it. Just because where do you go? You have to really kind of like think about like, how do we take this concept so that it's not just repetitive, the same thing over and over and over again.
Yes,
it's something that I think the Alien franchise does very well. Is kind of or at least attempt to reinvent itself, since the first one, the second one, each time and give us a different kind of view of everything. And I think it's Predator's turn now to kind of go off and do that.
Phil, what are your thoughts? Where should Predator go from here?
Well, I think ever since you said the thing you just said there, Bryant, I would now really need to see a buck naked Kevin Costner standing in front of a group of predators. The predators have come across him. I'd like to see that in the next.
Well,
to see that in the next film.
He's not doing any more of those westerns right now, is he?
Tayoucha. Sorry, I'm sorry. That was terrible.
That's okay. It was terrible, but it was great. Yeah, yes, I would like to, especially if they're going to sort of map. I mean, you have the ability to do this with sci-fi, map the predator's culture over something relevant, to
What
make
about
it.
colonization,
Yes, that's one
colonialism?
thing. Yeah. I mean, where are they getting these weapons from? They may be taking technology from
Yeah,
other cultures that they, take down, or that, or whatever it may be. Like, that's certainly a theme they could approach. I think in one of the Predators,
Hmm.
there were like two clans of Predators, wasn't
yeah,
there?
yeah. There was like a
Was that in
larger
Predators?
clan that
Yeah,
sort
Yeah.
of
yeah, yeah,
preyed
Like,
on
yeah.
the smaller
there's
clan. Yeah,
elements like that. There, as long as we're finding a reason to expand the universe and to map it thematically over something, like this film did a wonderful job approaching it thematically. I think you can never run out of stories then. Like,
Yeah.
because the predator is going to mean something a little different in that
sure.
story.
Yeah,
The characters they're up against are going to be relevant in a different way then.
Mhm.
And if it's just the hunt, whatever.
Boring.
Sure,
Yeah.
I'll go watch all of them because I'm an asshole. But am I going to enjoy them? I will hate myself for going to see them at a certain point. So no, I would like, even if it's the thinnest sort of mapping, I think you do need that going forward, and
yes.
we're showing here that we can still have the fun of a Predator movie and all the fucking like badass violence
Mm.
of a,
Mm.
like, what was that weapon that sprung open and cut a guy in half in the samurai
No,
one?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh shit,
It's like
like,
a
like it
yeah, spear
totally
that
caught
cuts
me.
people in half. Yeah,
Yeah, like, wow. You can still have all that fun
sure.
and have it still be meaningful and about something. And I think so long as you expand in a thoughtful sort of way and sprinkle in when you need to, um, then tell as many of these stories as you want. I'm there for it. I mean, like I said, I'm there for it anyway because I'm an asshole, but whatever. Uh, whatever.
Well,
Um, I
I'd prefer it one way over the other, of course.
I
I
think you
think
make
I'd prefer
some
not
good
to be the asshole.
suggestions.
I think
Yeah.
Phil just stumbled on a way to actually handle one of the biggest complaints about the Predator, which is that it's called a predator because it's a hunter, not a predator. So there's like a slightly different actual definitions of those two terms. I'm not going to try to get into it now because I would probably fail at it. But if they are taking from other cultures and they're seeking out other advanced cultures,
Yeah.
it is more of a predatory action because then
Yeah.
there's like this much wider net is being cast, so to speak. But
Well, and there's
one that
almost
slices
a,
you.
not to get too deep into that concept, but I think there's almost a something that I hope they play with there's almost a manifest destiny approach to
mhm.
what they're doing. They look at I imagine they look at the galaxy and go, look at what has been laid at our feet. We has been created for us to hunt.
Hmm.
Everything we see is ours,
Right.
and we can do what we will with
Sure.
it.
Hmm.
And so that it would be interesting to dive a little bit more into that and reflect on like, well, what is that? What is the
Sure.
extremity of that kind of culture
Right. I
bring?
mean, you had kings in, England sleeping with the wives of just married men because it was their right to do so.
Right, right.
Like how does this echo out in other cultures, and how can we like draw those themes together to take a look at
Yeah.
ourselves?
Yeah.
That's what the best science fiction does, right?
Well, and
And with
go
yeah.
ahead, Phil.
No, just what we've seen with these last two films, you can totally do it with the Predators. And
Mhm.
it's great and it works and it makes it so much better. So yeah, Trachtenberg. And I hope the
Yes.
studio doesn't learn the wrong lesson from
I
this. As
hope not. I hope not.
okay, I say that knowing they will,
They
and
will.
Yeah.
that's
They definitely
that's
will. So,
gonna make me an asshole again.
I
But we already
mean,
know I'm an
yeah.
asshole, so
No,
it's
it's like
okay.
the first movie works because it's a haunted house in the jungle
yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
movie,
Hmm.
and it's got horror movie style kills. Those are the things that this movie understands. This director
Right.
understands because
Yeah.
he's like,
Right.
that's why you get limbs flying up in the air that are sort of
yeah,
hilarious, because he gets that the gore can be fun.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
Hmm.
not
yeah.
about again brawn, and sweat and all that shit. It's like who
Like
cares?
the fact that the Predator is like not there. He's like a sort of reflection or mirage, even like an echo of the violence that we're already seeing.
Mhm.
Is just a wonderful little metaphor right in itself. His
You know what?
invisibility, like
Yeah.
he's kind of following the violence and it's attracting, the violence is attracting more violence. And again, you just look at this damn thing, and it's like there's so much you can talk about. It gets so rich, and the next goddamn studio head that takes this film is going to just have him running around gutting people again with another little fucking autistic kid, another fucking autistic kid who's going to go and save the world. Come on, studios.
Hey, sometimes he kills high school kids in like a sports chalet or whatever.
The biggest disappointment.
Waiting for the next exec to fuck this up.
Yeah, the biggest disappointment is that it was Shane Black who wrote that.
I know, right? Yeah, it really is.
Doing his worst work possible. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It was a big disappointment.
I was really looking forward to it. No, that was disappointing.
It's painful.
I just wanted to throw in that, Kraig, what you were saying, it reminds me that, yes, the easiest way to have done the Predator from the 80s on would have been the same as a Friday the 13th or a movie. It's just, let's bring back Jason bigger and badder, and they have to do something different to kill him. And that's the returns on that are so diminishing that, again,
just wait till you get to Predator in space. Just wait. Predator X.
Predator X. Predator 2000.
Well, we could have had Freddy versus Predator.
I mean, I am here for it.
Finger gloves.
Yeah, I have my bladed fingers crossed for that one.
Stop! You're giving them ideas. You're giving them ideas. I say we stop.
All right, sorry. Here, this is for Phil's benefit. Actually, I got one for you, Phil.
Dream. That's the question. Does a Predator dream? All right. Well,
that's our poster.
I just want to say one thing. This will make Phil feel better, okay? Which is that I wrote this down last night because it's just so for me, the Yautja and the Xenomorph are two of the coolest movie creatures ever created, and I've constantly asked myself, why do they endure, even when the fucking studios mess it up so bad? Why do these creatures still endure and still stick in our minds, kind of like a Michael Myers or Jason or whatever? Yeah. And what I wrote was Yautjas are cool because they are so humanoid but completely inhuman at the same time, right? But we share a lot in common with them. And then the Xeno is cool because it's completely unhuman and like basically anti-human, And like when a director or a writer remembers those particular elements, it always works. That's why Predators works for better, for ill, whatever you think about it. That's why Prey works, and that's why this works. And I just think that as long as, I mean, who knows how long Trachtenberg is going to be in the driver's seat here, but at least it looks like at least 2 more movies after this.
You'd think so, yeah.
It's a good roadmap. It's like Filoni drawing up a Keen roadmap, or what's his name from Marvel, Feige drawing up a Keen roadmap. It's not always going to work, but there's something about it that helps. That helps, and so hopefully Trachtenberg this roadmap will stick for a while.
Well, I really appreciate all of you making some time to talk about this. I know we could talk.
I'm sorry for losing my shit, Bryant. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll never do it again.
That's happens when we talk about the Predator.
Yeah, studios didn't have it coming, man. I mean, I don't know where you're coming from on that. The gall.
We could definitely talk about this for like at least another hour or two. But,
I've talked more about the Predators with you, Bryant, than I ever thought I would about anything in my life. So,
and it's not over yet.
Yeah, I know, right? It's not over yet.
That's what happens when a relationship begins arguing over Prometheus. That's what happens, Phil.
Also, he can't argue with his wife about it because she's scared.
She won't watch the Predators anymore.
I just shout out to Louis Ozawa for getting into 2 Predator movies. By the way, I was
wondering if anybody else noted that. Yeah,
that's it. That's my last note.
I definitely want to give each one of you a second to let everyone know where they can find you and your work online. You all do cool stuff. So let's go around once and do that. Dave, start us off.
DavidAccampo.com. I think David Accampo on Blue Sky. You can still find me on Instagram at Accampo. And that's about it. But buy the margins from Fanbase Press. I always got to throw in that plug. It's right there on Bryant's website.
Come buy
my amazing publishers.
Yes.
Bryant gets 2 plugs anyway.
Steve, where can we find you and your work online?
You can find me at monstermatador.com, and I'm on social media pretty much everywhere at Monster Matador or Kickstarter. We're usually running Kickstarter. So.
Excellent.
For Monster Matador.
You can find me everywhere on social media at Kraig Comics, KraigComx.
And of course, monkeygong.com, my publishing label. That's MONKEYGONG. And of course, across the aisle from Bryant and Fanbase Press in just a little over a month, that's San Diego Comic-Con Small Press.
Look for us at San Diego Comic-Con.
Mm-hmm.
Row O, am I right? O?
P? Oh, you're in O, I'm in P. Yeah.
OP, PO.
Hey, man. Get there. Whatever. As long as it's not PU, you know what I'm saying? All right.
OPP.
P for Predator.
P for Predator. What's the O for then? Oh, no.
I don't know.
It's for other people's predators.
Oh, a spine.
Phil, where can we find you and your work online?
Oh, I'm at Phillip Creates on a few different places, and the podcast group I produce and co-host at POPSKL Pod, POPSKL POD, POPSKL Pod. That's where I'm at. I don't get this upset all the time, but sometimes you'll see me throw a tantrum.
Some things are worth it.
Yes, definitely. We appreciate it. I'm going to say this without any intent. I mean, the pun is intentional, but without any glibness. It has been an honor to discuss all of this with you, and you get to go home alive. I don't need to take your
right.
But thank you for making some time to talk about this. It was an interesting film, and I just think the discussion brought so many great things out. So thank you.
Likewise, it was fun. Thank you very much.
There's a guy at my door with a collar in his hand. I'm not sure if I should open it.
We're planning another podcast right now, and you're all going to be abducted. Frozen to the right time.
I'm looking at my thumbnail, and there's 3 red dots on my forehead.
I will give you a few Fanbase Press recommendations. If you liked this podcast, if you enjoyed the conversation, we've got a bunch of Predator content on the Fanbase Press website, and I'll put those links in the show note. But just so you know, we do have Fanbase features on the Predator, as we mentioned, but also the original Predator, Predator 2, the Rodriguez produced Predators, and we are also we were lucky enough to have a special focus on the comic book crossover, Batman versus Predator. We did both a Fanbase Feature podcast, and we also did a video panel where Dave Gibbons, who did the writing for that, joined us and talked to us about bringing these two characters together and crossing them over. So definitely check those out. They'll be in the show notes. You can also find me on Instagram at Comic Book Sniffer. I'm also on Blue Sky at Comic Book Sniffer. Look for Fanbase Press and the Fanbase Weekly as well. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter. And then I also want to make sure everyone knows that the Fanbase Weekly is available on Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to us there so you don't miss an episode. Leave us a rating or review, which is very helpful. And last but not least, let you know that you can be part of the conversation. We have an email, thefanbaseweekly@gmail.com. Email us your thoughts, your questions, whatever it might be. We'd be happy to address them on a future episode. Let us know what you thought of Predator, Killer of Killers. I also want to give a shout out to our sponsor, GeekFest. GeekFest Film Festivals is back for its 12th year, bigger and better than ever. Submit your science fiction, horror, fantasy, thriller, action, and fan films now. Enter your best live action or animated genre short, web series, music video, or original trailer, and be a part of the world's only and longest running traveling geek genre film festival coming to Long Beach Comic-Con, Rose City Comic-Con, and Los Angeles Comic-Con. Be a part of 3 events for 1 entry fee. Submit your work at www.filmfreeway.com/geekfest. Thank you for listening, everyone. This has been Bryant Dillon with Fanbase Press, where we celebrate fandoms and create new ones. Until next time, please take care of each other.